All right, here is the sample for project one. This is what your final project is going to look like that you'll turn in to me in a few weeks. So your final project one. A couple of things that are really important. There's a rubric for this project, but your project should look really similar to this one. In the first introductory paragraph, you tell me where the student's from, how old he is, does he receive special education services, and what the person who helped you find him or her said their presenting issues were, and what it's always helpful to have information about what's in the classroom. Tell me when the student was assessed, and tell me which assessments you gave. And then at the very end, just a little statement about the student's behavior. This part of the report should not really look any longer than this. Do not get into big, long, lengthy explanations. I will take points off. I want it short, sweet. I want the information I want, and I want it presented as clearly as possible. The next section, you'll do this header here that will tell us which skill in reading, which skill area you are assessing, which is phonemic awareness. This is where you will present the student's blending results, and this is the informal blending measure that is in your assessment folder. The other piece, the other assessment that you'll put here, will put your phonemic segmentation fluency, which is a Dibbles assessment. And what's really important that you include the information about how many phonemes per minute, how it compared to the benchmark, and then just information about where that falls. Is he in Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 according to your Dibbles benchmark scores? And then you'll go back into your book and you'll look at how the student did, and you'll make decisions about whether he's, what stage of segmenting he's in, and what instructional target you'll start working towards there. That is all in Chapter 2. And if you look at the tables in Chapter 2, they will tell you what how the student is reading phoneme segments and what that tells you about his level of early reading development. And I want that information in this paragraph. The next chunk of the report deals with alphabetic principle, and that's the extent to which students have achieved the alphabetic principle from your informal beginning word attack measure. However you want to do this is completely fine with me. If your student knows all but 2 sounds and you just want to write those 2 unknown sounds here, that's fine. If it's about half and half, it would probably be helpful for you to write known sounds and unknown sounds, and then include how the student performed on CBC variants. If you have a student who is at benchmark on all of these assessments and who knows all of their letter sounds, that's a real good clue to you that that is not a pre-alphabetic reader, and so that's not a student that's appropriate for Project 1. You're going to have to find somebody else. Just a little hint. The next piece of this that you'll report is the Dibbles nonsense word fluency results. Again, you're going to want to tell me how he performed. Was he reading at the individual sound level? Was he reading whole words automatically? Was he doing subvocal sounding out? All of those descriptions are in your Bursick and Damer book, and I expect to see you using the language of our discipline from that book in your report here. Do not write more than what's here, but I expect you to be accurate and to describe specifically with this level of language, using language from the text, how your student performed on the assessments. You are only going to have one set of scores, which will be your spring scores, but I do expect you to report the number of correct letter sounds per minute and the number of whole words read per minute, and then how that compares to the actual benchmarks that are listed in your benchmark document from Dibbles Next, which has been provided for you in the material section. And finally, the last chunk of this reporting is fluency, and what you're reporting on is letter naming fluency. And I'm going to reiterate again here. It's in your book and it's in the Dibbles manual. But letter naming fluency is a measure of lexical recall. How quickly can your student pull known information out of his brain and give it back to you? Because that we often see kids who are really slow readers, but they're really accurate. And those are kids that we know might have a processing problem with accessing their long-term memory. This assessment is actually a pretty good rough measure of that ability. The generally accepted cutoff is 25 letters per minute, no matter how old your student. So if your student can perform this task at 25 letters per minute or higher, then we know that the student does not have difficulty with lexical recall. If, however, your student's performing at a level that's below 25 letters per minute, we can use the language that's here in this report. May have difficulty with lexical recall, may influence skill development in other areas of beginning reading. The next section of your report is the summary for John, and you go through and you rehash what you've just told me in the previous section of the report. I need to have all of that information presented again. The reason that I make you do it multiple times is because this report serves multiple people. A school psychologist, for instance, or reading specialist is going to just probably skim through here, look at the scores, and know what they mean. A parent, a general ed teacher, someone who's not well versed in reading, is going to need a little bit more explanation. And so you're going to use your teacher-friendly language, your parent-friendly language, to explain in a narrative format here everything that you just told me in the previous section. And then at the very end, you're also going to make sure that you, very end of each section, in this narrative report, you're going to tell me what teaching formats from Bursic and Damer you're going to use to work on which specific skills. I'm going to be looking for table format numbers, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to compare the formats that you're choosing to the skills that the student demonstrated on the assessment to make sure you're doing it right. So spend some time making sure that you're getting it right. You should have teaching formats for all of the skills. All right, there is a written document that tells you how to write instructional objectives. You will be writing instructional objectives for 4 to 8 skills based on your students' needs. Almost everybody will need some work with segmenting and blending. Almost everybody will need some letter-sound correspondence and sound writing. If you have students who know more than 6 to 8 consonants and 2 vowels, then you'll also be working on word reading and spelling. And if you have a kid who meets all of the criteria listed out on the table in your book, and you are ready to work with some decodable books, you're probably going to have to teach some exception words, and so you would write objectives for those. Again, all of this is going to depend on your individual students, but for the sake of this project and the sake of your lesson planning, my expectation is that you would work on anywhere between 4 and 8 skills in a half an hour time period. So you can print this out and look at it as I sort of talk you through it, but this is what the weekly lesson plan looks like. And again, you have this you have a hard copy of this, so you don't need to necessarily look at it sideways. But basically, the way that it's laid out, you're going to do 2 days of lesson planning. You're going to list all of your objectives. You're going to list the table numbers or the figure numbers from Bursic and Damer that go with it. You're going to write in the materials that you're going to use to instruct. So if you're working on short A, you're going to tell me you're working on short A, and then these are going to be the review sounds. And then you're going to tell me the teacher strategy that you're going to use, the motivational strategy. And most of the time, it's just the teacher-kid game. The sample lesson has 4 days worth of lesson plans. That's what we would typically do in a full semester, and you would actually implement those plans. For the sake of your sanity and time, because we only have 3 weeks, I'm only going to make you write 2 days of lesson plans, and then I'm not going to make you implement them. You are welcome to if you would like, but I don't think you're going to have time. So that is the project sample. There are really specific instructions loaded into D2L for each of these pieces. I just wanted to give you a quick and dirty overview, and then if you get confused when you're working through your project, you can always come back to this video and use it to check yourself and make sure you know what you're doing.